So I have Dr. Noelle Pomeroy here with me, and it's such a joy to have you.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, you're welcome. So let me just introduce you very quickly, and then I'll also give you a little bit of a chance to introduce yourself. So
Okay.
I think you are a clinical sexologist and licensed mental health counselor, and you have been working in this field for a long time, I think. How many
Yes.
years has it been?
15.
15 years.
All right.
And I think I have known you for probably, well, I don't know, at least 10 years. Uh,
Yes.
Yes. And I think, let's see, I think you used to have or still have, I don't know, a podcast about sex and movies.
Yes. It has been on hiatus, but we are going to bring it back in 2026.
Oh, that will be fun.
Yeah.
Yes. And you have your own clinic as well.
Hmm.
And what I love about your work is that from the first time I met you, you have always been very, obviously, like very nice, very warm. And I love that you work specifically with sex issues, which we need that. Do you want, what else do you want to add about my quick introduction?
Oh, well, just that I have worked with people with sexual issues of all types for quite a few years. I have particular passion about working with the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
Um, I've the part of the country I'm in, I've probably worked with hundreds and hundreds of transgender clients over the years, and that's probably my uh, proudest accomplishment
Uh-huh.
is being involved in their care.
Cool. And let's start with some of the questions that I have. I'm so excited about this because I have been wanting to talk to you a long time with some of these questions.
Okay.
So, in terms of sex, what do you think that people are most uncomfortable about in terms of like talking about sex?
Okay.
Um, yeah, what has surprised you that people tend to be uncomfortable talking about?
Sure. Well, I mean, I could take that question in a couple directions. One being, what really has surprised me is the number of couples who have been in a relationship that has sex in it for several years, sometimes many years, and they've actually never spoken to each other about sex.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's part of their life. It's something that they do, but it's never been directly addressed. They don't talk about what they like. They don't talk about what they don't like. They don't talk about what they hoped their sex life would look like versus what it does look like. And that always blows my mind.
Yeah, that they're having sex but not talking about sex.
Absolutely. I've worked with a couple, it's been a while, who they had sex every day of their marriage,
Uh-huh. Wow, that's a
but
lot.
had never spoken about it.
Yeah.
Never
Uh-huh.
spoke about whether that was something they needed to do, wanted to do, whether they were both on board with that. It was just something almost like brushing their teeth, just something
Yeah.
they did every day.
Uh-huh.
But when it comes to people coming into the office to
Yeah.
talk about sex and what makes them anxious, a lot of times that really depends on kind of what their environments are like when the homes they grew up in and whether sex was talked about
Yeah.
there or even acknowledged as a thing that people do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or whether there was shame attached to it. People who are really anxious about talking about sex generally had a lot of shame attached to sex in their households growing up, or it was just something that was never talked about. And the implication from that not talking about it is that it was somehow bad.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because like
Hmm.
in some ways we're talking about like learning through modeling, right? If people talk about sex, then you're gonna find it natural to talk about sex, and then if that's not something that you grew up with, then it would be hard to talk.
Yeah. And people who are more open about it in their families, they tend to at least be a little bit more comfortable with that if they, if they had the kind of relationship with their parents that their parents were asking them if they were sexually active when they were teenagers and or had birth control discussions with them. They tend to be a little bit more open about it. But that also carries over to if they're when they're adults, if they talk about sex in their marriage, they tend to be a little bit less nervous or at least appear to be less nervous when they come in and
That makes
talk to me
sense.
about it. I would say that probably the one that kind of surprises me the most is I do treat pretty frequently the male issue of premature ejaculation.
Mhm.
And this is anecdotal. This is not me with any sort of research numbers to back that up.
Yeah.
But it usually takes men years,
Mhm.
multiple years to get that addressed. I think because there's oftentimes
Shame, right?
shame
Yeah.
attached to it, the denial that it's actually a problem, the hope that it is almost a grief process, a hope
Yeah.
that they can get through it on their own. And I have worked with men who've had erectile dysfunction for 8 years before they've ever seen anybody about it.
And when they come to see you, like, is it from the prompting of their partners, or is it more, they got to a place where they're like, okay, I can't resolve this on my own, and I need some help. Like, is it like an exhaustion thing of like having tried everything, or is
Well,
it more prompting from other people?
yeah, specifically with premature ejaculation, I would say that they come because their partners have insisted that they do at that
Yeah.
point. Like, if you don't address this, then we are going to have to make a huge change in our relationship. Maybe that even meaning our relationship ends.
Mm-hmm.
That probably, but what I see more often than not is that they come in and they say, this has been an issue for so long. My partner's been asking me to do something for it for about 5 years. I've now decided to do something about it, but my partner has said that she or he is no longer willing to help me, because the treatment for premature ejaculation is best if your partner is supportive and actually helps with some of the treatment. And oftentimes their partners have said, "Nope, I'm my time to help you has passed," and that
They
makes it even more
also tired
complicated.
of.
Yes.
So that's interesting, right? Because I think you don't see couples, right? You're seeing individuals and then giving them the tools. Am I understanding there right? Or do you see couples as well?
My personal preference as a therapist is I don't see a lot of couples unless it has to be it's relevant, like, to the treatment that I see them both. It doesn't.
Okay.
I usually will see individuals. Sometimes we'll bring in a partner for a session or two.
Yeah.
That's how I prefer to work. I do accommodate couples if it's absolutely necessary.
Mhm.
And again, part of that is my preference and how I
Yeah.
think I work strongest as a clinician.
Uh-huh.
Um,
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, that's how I try to do it. It's not always what's called for, though.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because I definitely got the partner that's like exhausted and tired of working, and once the one that is needing more help to kind of like take action. Right? I get that, and I come from the perspective that I'm always, not always, but like mostly working with the couple, so I can imagine how it would be difficult when you have a partner that's kind of tired of the inaction of the other.
Right. We see that all the time,
Yeah.
even if someone's just got a mental health issue, they're dealing with not necessarily sexual, and their partner's like, I've been asking you to see someone about your anxiety for 6
Yeah.
years, and now you're finally willing to. It can get exhausting
For sure. Yeah.
for both people.
Yeah. Yes. And it requires, talking about shame, it requires you to be willing to like show up and share a very vulnerable thing
Mhm.
with somebody that you don't know, like a stranger, you and me, or another mental health provider. It also requires people to acknowledge that they don't have all the answers, which is really hard.
Yes, it is. And so many men in 2026 are watching porn with a regularity that, even if they don't start out with, if they start out with the understanding that this is performative, what I'm watching.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore,
Entertainment.
yeah, it's entertainment. I
Yeah.
know that I don't have to behave like this. If they watch enough of it, it does start to wiggle its way in to give them some, like, maybe I am supposed to last 40 minutes during intercourse, or maybe we are supposed to change positions 8 times in 5 minutes.
Mm.
So if you watch something with enough repetition, you start to lose contact with what reality looks like versus this orchestrated performance.
Yeah, I love what you're saying right now, and I think it's so important. Um, that in some ways, the way that I have always taught is like, porn, it's entertainment. I think you used a different word, um, and it's a interesting concept, right? That like it's not normal. Normal, that might be a tough word. It's not realistic, right?
Right.
What people see is not realistic. Um, so that makes total sense to me. I tend to work with secular people and also with people that have a Christian background. So, and in the Christian environment, we have people that are completely against porn, and then in the secular, there's people that are okay with it. And I also have actually seen people that find um, that think that even watching porn is a form of infidelity.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have work with a range of kind of different perceptions and definitions of, if porn is acceptable or not. What has been your experience with the population that you work with, and also what are people telling you in the sense
Mm-hmm.
of like, porn, is it helpful or not helpful for them?
Well, a lot of times we will have people who come in and they say, I think I have a porn addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I have learned to approach that was like such a subjective
Yeah,
term
yeah,
because I have worked with, and I'm going to say men for this. It doesn't mean that there aren't women who overuse porn in a way that affects their functioning. But for the most part, I'm dealing with men who have this issue. And a man will say, I'm here because my wife thinks I have a porn addiction and I want to get treatment for it. And then after talking to them about the details of that, they watch porn once a month.
okay,
So, but it does not coincide with the values that they have agreed to in their marriage.
okay. Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it feels overwhelming and like it's it's bad. Therefore, it must be an addiction. There's being judgment put on it
Yeah,
by a partner, and then there's also lots of shame.
yeah,
But I also work with men who will come in and say, I'm not functioning sexually. They'll come in because they believe they have erectile dysfunction, or they're finding that their sex life is not satisfying with their partner and it used to be. And talking to them, they'll say, oh yeah, I watch porn twice a day, every day. And no shame about it. I'm not saying they should. It's just that they don't have any shame about it because to them, watching porn is a perfectly acceptable sexual expression. And
yeah.
it might be, but they're using it to a point where it has started to not only like change the chemicals in their brain so they're not actually reliably able to get erections when they want to with another human,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also oftentimes causing them to sexually objectify people in their lives
Yeah.
that they don't want to be sexually objectifying. And it'll also cause their partners to sometimes feel like they're having sex with their partner's not body. They're not actually intimately connecting with them.
Uh, so I would imagine that that's very painful for their partners, right? To feel,
Absolutely.
yeah, to feel like they're interacting sexually but not present.
Yes. They I don't know what your swearing policy is, so and I will abbreviate, but I will have women often will say, we used to make love, now he just F's me.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, and that's usually a pretty significant symptom of porn overuse.
Yeah.
And by overuse, I mean like affecting your functioning, affecting your ability to relate to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And when I have seen people that have come in with what they are self-reporting, right, a porn addiction or their spouses, usually, and not just porn, like sometimes other issues like infidelity or um, happy ending massages or anything like that.
Mhm.
Often, not all the time, but often they will share a desire to escape reality or dull some difficult feelings or negative feelings. Do you see that as well?
Yes, because watching porn and getting all those chemicals flooding your brain is very much an escape from our thoughts and our
Yeah.
anxieties. A behavior I see a lot in couples when they have ended up in my office, or one of them has ended up in my office, is uh, what I kind of call like fishing by the partner. And men in this example I'm about to give, where she will have gone on his phone and seen that he's interacting with people online, and he's always seems to end it when the person proposes getting together and meeting that they're talking to. So it's
Uh-huh.
sort of like seeing who's out there, having conversations, feeling desired, the excitement, the chase, the fishing,
Mhm.
but then actually never going through and meeting with the person to have any sort of sexual or emotional engagement. And that's what's bringing them to therapy, because the partner feels betrayed
Mhm.
because their partner has been online interacting with people in an intimate way.
Right.
I see a lot of that. And really what seems to kind of get people going for that is that feeling desired, feeling for a moment that they matter to another person, the the excitement of fishing. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
think I've caught something. Oh, this is
Yeah.
great. This is great. I don't actually want to eat the fish.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I'm going to throw it back.
Right, right. But it still gives them like that, like to your point, like that.
Dopamine.
Yeah, the dopamine. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And let's see here. I there was this conversation is going really well, but there was one specific comment that I read on a Facebook group, and I wanted to ask your opinion on it.
Okay.
The person made the following comment: sexual pleasure is for both spouses, not just men. In duty, sex kills desire, and porn ruins relationships. What do you think about? There's different things there for sure, different levels.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
So I would say that I kind of already talked to the porn part a little
Yes.
bit, but
Yeah.
duty sex, meaning that someone has sex with their partner because it's been a while, or we should, or uh, they want it and I don't really care, but I'm going to do this for
Yeah.
them. So I would say duty sex might be something that you see with some regularity in healthy relationships. I
Yeah.
think everybody's got a limit to how much
Mhm.
they can start participating in it before they get resentful.
Mhm.
So I kind of figuring out where that is per person, because you could have someone that their tolerance level is, I only want to have sex with my husband or with my wife if I am 100% feeling it.
Yeah.
That's the only time I'm ever going to have sex. And so if they're not 100% in the mood, then that's, makes them uncomfortable to kind of start things up and see if they can get their body kind of going in that direction. So this often leads to a lot of discussions about, if we have a scale from 0 to 10, with 10 being the most aroused that you could imagine yourself being, and 0 being, I don't know, in line at the DMV, not aroused at all. I will often talk to people, a lot of times
Mhm.
having this conversation with women, where do you need to be interested in sex? Or if your partner were to say, like, should we participate? Should we have some sex? For you to say yes. And a lot of women will tell me they need to be about a 4 or a 5.
Uh-huh.
But then some women will say, well, you know what? I probably am like a 4 or a 5, but I was thinking I needed to be at an 8 or a 9. And so if we can conceptualize that as far as like, what is duty sex? Are you having sex when you're like open to it, but really like not there yet? But if you start making out or touching, that maybe your body can start to feel something, versus someone who is, I have a stomach ache, I feel miserable, I had a horrible day,
Oh, yes. Mhm.
but I haven't had sex with my husband in blank days, blank
Yeah.
weeks. I just need to suck it up and have sex tonight. That's the stuff that's more likely to lead to resentment and, well, I think the comment said something like the death of a marriage or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's the type of thing that can really bother some people.
Yeah, I think kills desire, right? I think that was
Certainly.
the person said, and that
Yeah.
makes sense, right? I think it not only kills desire, but it probably increases contempt and resentment.
Yeah. And it's hard to find a balance because duty sex, or like feeling like you're saying yes when you don't want to, leads to the lack of desire, but so does constant rejection.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's really difficult to find a balance.
Hmm. Especially when people have different desires, um, different desires in general, right? Traditionally, I think we know that like men tend to want more sex than women. I have certainly found that to be true in my practice. Not to say that the opposite is not true; it certainly happens.
Yes.
But I wonder, in terms of sorry, I keep taking and putting my glasses on.
That's okay.
So in terms of like desire though and sexual pleasure, do you find that for women it's connected to hormones?
Well, while I am not a hormone expert
Yeah.
by any stretch, I can tell you that the time in women's lives where they tend to start experiencing a real shift in the role of sex in their lives tends to be around when some women start to reach perimenopause and are going to be having some hormone shifts. However, I also think, and this is probably hormone related as well, I think oftentimes the birth of children is
Yeah.
also a significant shift for that person. So it's kind of hard to tell. Um, I do think there is especially with social media, and there just being so much information out there about,
Yeah.
if you have this problem, have you considered looking at this solution? I do think that there is a important, like, people need to advocate for their health and to see if their hormones are correctly balanced. But I often do hear about people pushing for people to alter their hormones who don't necessarily understand all of the things that does to one's body when you do alter your hormones.
Yeah.
Taking testosterone so that you are more, you have a higher level of desire and arousal is not like just eating a piece of candy.
Right.
It's
Right.
something that affects so many systems in your body that a lot of physicians are actually not necessarily excited to put people on hormones for a variety of reasons, unless there is a very clear clinical reason.
Hmm.
So I see a lot of people hoping that hormones are the problem so that those can be easily adjusted medically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so on my end, where I'm not a medical doctor,
Sure.
more of a mental health doctor, it's kind of um, difficult for me to have too much of an opinion on what hormones are doing. But I have so many women in my office that are at the
Right.
age where hormones are really uh, affecting them,
Yeah. Yeah.
certainly.
So what are some of the other things that you think, affect desire, besides, hormones? I mean, stress is a big one. Stress is the
Oh,
one that.
certainly. Stress. And so on every group I've ever talked to about this, I always use this but I think it's perfect. Like, when it comes to desire and arousal, I think men are like microwaves and women are like crock pots.
Mm. Mhm.
Men can kind of almost instantaneously become interested in sex. Of course, there are exceptions, and women kind of need a warm up period, whether it's hours or sustained minutes, sometimes days, where it's sort of like an idea in their head, a seed has been
Mm.
planted, and then they can kind of get to a mental place where they would be interested in sex. But we live in a society now where everything is instant, right? We have,
Yes.
if I can't think of the actor that I just saw, what movie was in the last movie, I Google it right away, right? I get
Yeah.
the answer right away. If I'm watching a show on television that I really like, I also find myself scrolling on my phone because I'm not getting enough input into my brain. So the idea that someone might need consistent attention for a longer period of time, or it might seem high maintenance.
Mhm. Mhm.
And also,
Yeah.
how much time are we willing to give something to get our brain on board with our body, when we're used to things being rapid and makes us feel broken sometimes? The number of couples who will tell me, I don't know why we're not having more sex. And then I'll say, well, how often are the two of you actually sitting down, looking at each other, speaking, sharing,
Mhm.
without one of you holding a phone
Yeah.
or the TV being on? And the number of times they'll tell me, like, oh, we don't do that. Okay, that's where we need to start.
Yeah. 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 The emotional connection has to be there for a lot of people. Yeah.
Certainly. And it doesn't mean that it has to be there all of the time for it to happen, but for especially longer term couples that have been together more than 18 months, it
Mhm.
needs to be there with some frequency for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. And do you find that people tend to, blame their partners when either desire is not there as much as they want it to be, or blame themselves?
Sure. And I see all sorts of examples of both of those
Yeah.
situations. I think sometimes what's a really difficult thing to get through to somebody is that sometimes something can affect you but not be about you.
That's a very good
So
point. Yeah.
I, can talk to somebody who's feeling like they would like to have sex more frequently. They would like to have different types of sex with their partner, and they're not successful with getting what they want. And that can be about their partner's mental health situation. It can be
Mm.
about their partner's sexual trauma. It can be about their anxieties about sex. It can be about so many things. It doesn't always mean, and actually very rarely means, that they're not into or attracted to their partners. It's just that it's a much more complicated place to get to than am I horny or am I not? And so there can be a disconnect because there's an assumption on the partner who wants more sex that this person's not attracted to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And sometimes even if their partner will explain to them why, if they can't even can explain
Right. Sometimes
why,
they can't. Yes.
right, why they're not as attracted, or not attracted, but not as interested in sex.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a distrust that develops that, oh, it has to be about something else, someone else. It has, and then if you have someone with low self-esteem,
Right.
of course they're going to think it's about them.
Mhm.
So communicating with people about, it's not about you, but it does affect you. And then you see the other side of that, sometimes the denial of, this is something that I see a lot of, is a woman will come into my office and
Mhm.
say, I want to have sex more frequently with my husband. And then they will proceed to tell me for the next 45 minutes all the reasons they hate their husband.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm using strong language, but that's
Right.
essentially what
I,
they're
I
telling
I
me.
know what you mean. Yes.
And then they say, so what can you do about that? And I want to say, absolutely nothing,
Right. Right.
until
Right.
we address the relational problem. Because I think maybe this is where TV and movies have done people a disservice with that enemies to lovers thing,
Yes.
where it's, we fight and then we have sex and then we realize our connection is more important than anything else we were talking about.
Yeah.
Like that might be a thing when people don't have or from time to time, or it's a short-term relationship. That's not generally an effective strategy for intimacy in a long-term relationship.
Right. Right. Yeah. And actually, Gottman research, right? They do talk about like being a very specific sect of the population that can do that, right? Very, very small number. Yeah. So unfortunately, we're gonna fight, right? And then have this amazing sex afterward. It's not true for most people. Yeah, most people actually need it's two drastic places, right? It's two different, two opposite places. So it's very hard to do both, especially like in the same day.
Yes. The best thing that I can hear from someone is, my partner and I are at two different places we agree that somewhere in between is probably attainable. What can we do to help our partner and ourselves get there? I mean, I don't know that anyone speaks like that, but if they do generally say that, I'm like, oh, you guys have all the reason in the world to be hopeful.
Yeah.
And I do say that to couples who come in, or individuals, and I find out their partners are supportive in that way. Those are the people that I have hope for.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ones that say, fix my husband, fix my wife, that I'm like,
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you right, I think what you're saying is like, in order for us to address uh, issues in a relationship, we need both people to recognize that neither one of them is to blame. That there might be some changes that both of them need to make. That they are both responsible for the relationship, but neither one is to blame, and that they both have to work together. And it's not about us like getting help for us to change their partner or even to change themselves completely. Right? It has to be a two-way street. It's a two-way street.
yes. And in the circumstances which are limited, where it is one person who is 100% of the problem, again, it's pretty rare. There's usually some other underlying mental health issue that a lot of times a personality issue
Right.
getting in the way.
And making it hard for not just the sex, but also for the relationship in general.
Yes.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's also what I tend to see in my practice. You mentioned movies and TV. Like, is there a specific movie or TV show or scene that like you think that does show intimacy in a good way, in a way that's healthy, and you're like, oh, they got this piece right. Putting you in the spot a little bit.
Well, I'm a huge movie and TV person, so I love that you're asking me that. Thank you very much. I would say, not a lot of them show things over time because they really can't.
Yeah.
So, that's one place where movies specifically kind of fall short. But I am a really big fan of shows that get like consent
Oh
correct.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So right now, I don't know if you've heard about it, but there's a show on HBO called Heated Rivalry. It's a story about two gay male hockey players who start a sexual relationship and it evolves.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like the more dominant person in the relationship does a really good job during their sexual encounters, which are very steamy, by the way. I'm not going to pretend
Okay.
it's all clinical.
Yeah.
Of continuously checking in with the less experienced, less dominant partner.
Okay.
So I really like that.
Uh-huh. Because it shows, I think what you're saying is that because it shows like consent, and also because it shows communication between partners.
Right. And it's ongoing consent, is this okay?
Yeah.
Is this okay? Is this okay? No, not like it's a broken record, but sort of,
Right.
just want to make sure that you're okay. Sometimes in movies and TVs, we say like, oh, the person said we can start, therefore we're going through to the end. And, there's really no, I do like that. I do like, I feel more modern, and I don't really necessarily have an example, more modern TV and movies shows women being more open about their sexuality and not as much shame attached to being liking sex, women liking sex. I feel like when Sex in the City came out in the late 90s, people were like, oh my goodness, it's a show where women talk about sex and they like sex. And it was this groundbreaking thing. And I feel like it's more just accepted right now in media culture, these things that like, oh, this is a woman that like goes out and she dates men and she has sex when she feels like it and she's not ashamed about it. And she's not oversexed. She's not a nymphomaniac, as they used to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do like that that's becoming more prominent or more common in our media that we see today.
Any shows in general, it doesn't have to be particular scenes where you think that that's not like what they're showing you, it's not
Oh,
healthy.
I mean, the
Realistic.
list of ones that I could come up with that are weird or unpractical. Any movie where two of the main characters are having sex underwater, like in a swimming pool or a hot
Yes.
tub, I always find it so amusing because, while it would be sexy, kind of the idea of like we're
Mhm.
in this thing, is that water's like agreeably like practically the slipperiest thing on the planet, right? But for some
Yes.
reason, it is the least lubricating thing on the planet when it comes to sexual behavior. So
Yeah.
I always laugh when I see like these two people, making out in a hot tub in the show or a movie, and then they start, they're having sex. I'm like, I bet they're both really wishing they were on dry land right So I would say that. And then, this isn't a bad thing, but like sex in movies can't really show the preparation it sometimes takes to be intimate.
Mhm.
I always kind of think it's cool when you see two people start, and one of them will say like, "Hey, I just need to pop to the bathroom real quick.
Yeah.
I'll be right back." And you're like, "Oh, they're probably in there going to peeing or, putting in their IUD or whatever it is if they're
Whatever it
putting an
was. Yeah.
IUD." Um, because I always think when I see a heterosexual intercourse scene, and I'm like, why isn't the first thing her getting up and going to the bathroom immediately afterwards instead of laying in bed?
Yeah. Yeah. They don't really show that. That's true.
No, they differently don't, or like doing laundry afterwards because they're like, okay, I'm not sleeping on the sheets later. I don't know about you.
The realities, right? Yeah. They romanticize a lot of this stuff. As you were talking, I was reminding a conversation that I had many, many, many years ago with a friend of mine who was sharing her somebody that she knew um, had had sex at the beach, which it's supposed to be very romantic when you're seeing in movies like people kissing at the beach or whatnot, right? And then she explained to me, well, the sand was everywhere, right?
Oh,
Which so
yes. So
not
gritty.
romantic at all. But anyways, and it still on this topic of like uncomfortable things,
Hmm.
and also like long-term relationships. If there's a couple that or just one person that came to you and said, we have been together for a long time, and sexual desire has decreased. What would we're wondering if it's gone forever. What would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that if they've been together for a really long time, and I'm going to say over 10 years,
Yeah,
meaning over long, but I mean, I've worked with couples that have been together 40 years,
yeah.
is that they need to know if they're going off of old information and if it wouldn't be worth collecting some new information.
Mhm.
So sometimes if people don't give each other constructive feedback when they're being engaging in any physical or sexual intimacy, if you've been with someone since you were 23 years old and you're now 43, and you think, oh, she really likes it when I scratch the back of her knee, or
Yeah.
you know what, that's how her skin and her nerve endings felt at 23. But with hormones, with the thickness or our skin changing, like you might want to check in with her about that to see if she still likes it, because it might actually feel off-putting now. Or maybe she prefers to have her head scratched or something else done, and it gives her that same feeling and she just hasn't asked for it because maybe she hasn't even processed the fact that that's what she wants.
Mhm.
So I think it makes sense to kind of do exercises where you touch each other, maybe even in non-sexual ways, to figure out and to ask questions like, does this feel good? What could feel better? To sort of see, maybe things have changed over that period of time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then
Uh,
also to ask them to adjust to the fact that your sex life that you had at the beginning of your relationship as sad as this may sound for me to say it so bluntly, like that's old news.
Yeah.
What?
I actually like that because that's like empowering in some ways, right? Like
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
another stage of life, which can be good.
Right. What is a new normal that you can achieve? If I had $1 for every time a man says to me in clinic, um, when I was young, my erections were so hard they could cut glass. I can't tell you how many men have said that. First of all, no, they couldn't. But I understand what you're saying. And now it's not like that.
Yeah.
And okay, and that's just an example of like your body is incapable of performing like it did then. And you also, and women will say, um, you know, I used to be okay performing oral sex when I was young, and it just doesn't feel right anymore.
Mm.
Like, I just feel like something I shouldn't be doing anymore. And that's not a situation where that person needs to be talked into doing it again. It might need to be something that is just like, it's okay. You know, it might cause some conflict with the partner potentially, but
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. How do you
it's
then?
just sometimes things
Oh,
shift. I have different opinions and different things now when I'm 50 than I did when I was 30. And if I had to obligate myself to always doing those, even non-sexual things that I did when I was 30, I might be unhappy at 50. So, and that's where empathy comes in, because sometimes understanding where a partner's coming from, like if we can kind of get to that, we can kind of sometimes like accept the change more than feeling like just the devastation of not getting what I want anymore.
yeah. And I think that's where communication is so important to your, how we started as like having conversations and not just like superficial conversations about acts, right? But like what each person needs and what each person, where they are in their lives and what they're hoping for each other and for the relationship is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, so the other thing I was going to ask you is actually as we wrap up, because we're almost done. So where can people find you? Can you share a little bit about like the podcast and then your clinic and anything
Sure.
else you know about you?
So the practice that I own is in Jacksonville, Florida, and it's called Jax Therapy. It formerly used to be called the Jacksonville Center for Sexual Health, but now since myself and my clinicians treat things outside of the sexual realm, it's called Jax Therapy, and the website is Jax, Jax, like short for Jacksonville, -therapy.com. So jax-therapy.com. And the podcast that has lots of episodes but haven't had a new one in a while, and we're planning on going in 2026 and doing more, is called Real Sex, like REEL, like movie Real
Yeah.
Sex with Dr. Noelle.
Yeah, and I have listened to a couple of little snippets and it was really interesting. So I highly recommend that people go and listen to it.
You know, I would
love
recommend that if you do listen to it, like the later episodes where I
Yeah.
kind of found my footing. At first, I started off with having a different guest every time to talk about sex scenes that were kind of important to them or that they found interesting.
Yeah.
But when the show kind of started to get into its groove is when I consistently had my husband as my co-host.
Yeah.
Because he is not he's far from a sex therapist. He's kind of a little bit on the vanilla side. He hates mess, like house mess and things. So, and a lot of times these sex scenes would involve people knocking things off counters and to hear his devastation with popcorn being spilled all over the floor
Yeah.
during a sex scene is kind of interesting. So that's kind of more in the later episodes.
Yeah, I think that's the one that I listened to, and I was listening, and had some people around, and I was like, wait, I'm gonna listen more when I don't have people around. But it was really good. The part
Oh,
that
I'm
I
glad you
listened,
like it. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. Yeah. And I really appreciate our conversation. I'm so thankful for you and for you sharing your amazing knowledge with us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It was nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Gonna stop. Try to stop now.